is slightly disappointed that he's not on webcam, so he would like you to know that he's available for questions about den sightings. And he's done his hair and
We can promote him.
Sean who? Who? Oh,
Sean is on there right now.
that's hilarious.
But I don't know any of the Andres Giron,
You'll never get the full.
Francis Pell, Jan McCallum,
I can't see the presentation. Should I see the presentation?
Not yet. I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I'm supposed to advance it. It's going to be hard if I can't see it.
So whenever.
That's awesome.
So whenever you're ready to present, like start presenting.
I think it's time.
I think it is
Are
time.
you guys ready?
Yeah.
So, can I get that presentation?
So if you just click on first click on this little unmute here,
Sorry, click where?
the little unmute button there. This one. Over below it, yeah. So now you're live. Click on share screen. Yep. And then click on the presentation and share. The little button on the top there. This one there. Yep. One more time. And I can advance the slides and your mic should be live.
Perfect. All right. Let me know when to go.
You're good to go?
Oh, wonderful. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Selena Campbell. I'm Acting Director for Municipal Enforcement Services. Welcome to tonight's virtual public meeting where we'll be discussing living with wildlife. Tonight's session will be focused on coyotes. So this meeting is one of the first virtual public engagement meetings that the town has hosted, and I hope you enjoy the format. Tonight, we hope to improve your confidence and comfort level in coexisting with coyotes by discussing the science of coyotes along with the town's coyote program. This will be an interactive session where you can submit questions. If you're signed in as a participant, you can enter your questions through the Q&A. If you're watching online, you can call the number that will be provided during the presentation after each presentation is finished. I am pleased to introduce our panel composed of town staff and external partners. First, from the town of Oakville, we have Margaret Boswell, Supervisor of Enforcement, Donna Hales, Acting Manager of Climate Change and Strategy. With the Oakville Humane Society, we have Caitlin Jones, Manager of Animal Services, and from Coyote Watch, we have Leslie Sampson. Tonight, sorry. So tonight, we will start with a presentation from Coyote Watch, discussing the science of coyote behavior. Then we will hear from the Humane Society, and then a presentation from the town staff regarding the town's coyote program. So please welcome Leslie Sampson and her Coyote Watch presentation. And one more slide, please.
Hi, Leslie, are you there?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Can you hear me?
We can now, yes. Can you see the slide? We're on the first slide.
Can you hear me okay? Absolutely. Yes, I can. So everyone can hear me, I'm hoping.
If you
Can
can
you
speak
hear
a
me
little bit
okay?
more into into your microphone.
Okay, is that good? Is that better?
If you can, I don't know if you can get closer or,
Okay. Is that better?
that's much better. Thank you. Can you see the presentation?
Okay. I can, yes.
Okay,
Sorry,
perfect.
folks, for the community members that are there. Okay, the next slide. We'll keep it going. Can you hear me? Next slide.
Yes. Can you see it?
Yes, that's essentially the subject matter that we'll be covering tonight, and the basic biology and ecology, seasonal milestones, and then getting into wildlife proofing backyards and setting safe and appropriate boundaries. So next slide, please. We lost a little bit of time there with the sound trouble. Next slide, please. Okay, so Coyote Watch Canada provides a canine response team for communities to work in partnership. And so we essentially work in collaboration directly with the town of Oakville, different stakeholders, and we essentially do investigation, work with enforcement officers, and education and prevention. That's the mainstay of our program, but the town of Oakville actually has an amazing coexistence program that all of these 4 cornerstones are met. So that's really great. The next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide.
Are you going to speak to the developing a coexistence or the next slide after that?
No, this is fine.
Okay.
So I know that I think, Margaret, you'll be touching a little bit more on the mapping.
Correct.
But essentially what I'd like to share with the audience is that we rely heavily on a mapping system. And so that's another tool that the town of Oakville has. We need that because it really is the quick snapshot of what's taking place in a community. And though each one of those yellow little points, that's the same coyotes moving throughout their own territory. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. So essentially, I covered on the last slide. So with the mapping and why it's so important is because it highlights when the program is successful. Okay. Can you hear me when I'm telling you to move the slide or not?
Yes, there's a little bit of a delay, so I think we'll be caught up once we.
Okay.
If you want to speak to
Okay.
the good
Yeah,
things about
so just
mapping.
I'll wait. I'll say next slide and then I'll wait.
Yes,
Okay.
perfect.
Sorry about that, folks. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about sensationalism headliners. So there's often a plethora of articles and news headlines about coyotes in communities, and oftentimes it doesn't really involve investigativism, and the term coy wolf is used inaccurately when people are reporting about coyotes. So the investigation process, which is currently taking place with the town of Oakville, it's an amazing tool to actually gather evidence in the field. And so it's really important as consumers of social media that you scrutinize what information is coming in and make sure that you're aware of the origin of that information and what is the context of that. Next slide. And so when we look at coyotes in context, so you can see from the statistics, in all of North America, there's been 2 deaths with coyotes that are related to coyotes. And in comparison to other risks that we live with every day, that's why it's so important to have a really solid coexistence program, which again, the town of Oakville is instrumental in creating that education and awareness for the community. And, you know, I think it's really important to look at this species and have a perspective in terms of, you know, we minimize the risk through education and prevention. Next slide. So context is everything. So that coyote there is yawning. And oftentimes social media would pick that photo up and they would throw that up there and say the coyote's growling and it was snarling at me. And that's just one coyote, and that coyote's name is Patches, doing a big, huge yawn. And so the context of that is basically an animal that's laying on the ground, but without that context, it could be used in very negative ways and misleading ways too. The next couple of slides that you'll see, the first one, it's it might be a little bit rough for some folks to see, but I think it's important to appreciate and gain an understanding about how misleading the social media and reporting can be. Next slide. So in this photo, this was shared close to 1 million times on Facebook, and some folks were sharing it and really not understanding the background or the story behind it. But the main script of this is that around breeding time, male coyotes get very aggressive and they will lure a dog to, you know, pack members that are waiting to pounce and kill the dog. And this was circulated, like, you know, as I mentioned, close to 1 million times. And many people in the vet industry were sharing this. Unfortunately, if you're not looking at it through a critical lens, you don't realize that there's things going on with this photo that aren't really indicated by just that one snapshot. You can do the next slide, please. So that coyote actually was in a trap, and there were dogs, that's a trap line, and so the dogs were harassing and going after the coyote. So that's the context that most folks that shared that photo never knew about, and it was, you know, extremely devastating for many people. Next slide, please. And so busting the myths 101, probably the top 5 that we've come to appreciate the myths around coyotes is that they abandon their pups, which is not accurate, that when they are attacking and killing something to eat, that they're howling and vocalizing. Also, one of the other myths is that we have two species of coyotes in our area, and we don't. We have one. It's not the coy wolf, it's the eastern coyote, but some folks still do call it the coy wolf. Okay, next, please. Okay, next, please. And this slide, this is of Patches, and she was a coyote in Toronto that was fed for quite a significant amount of time. And we ended up doing aversion conditioning with her. But I think with these animals, they bring out the best and worst in people. And I think through direct education and promoting safety and prevention measures, communities do a really great job at coexisting with these animals. Next, please. And so if you look at the classification, as I mentioned, we have the eastern coyote, and that's essentially a cross of the western coyote and the eastern wolf, which is now referenced as the Algonquin wolf. They aren't a species, a separate species, so they still fall under the species of Canis latrans. And again, you know, since the hybridization over a century ago, people still are inclined to want to call the eastern coyote a coy wolf, but it's exactly the same animal, and it's the same animal that we've all known for over, you know, over a century. Next, please. And so that gives you a good visual on the size, because we often get reports. Coyotes are one of those species because they're long and lean, and they're often overestimated in their size. So that gives you a really great scale to see in terms of, you know, where does the coyote fit into that with our wolves and domestic dogs and the fox, and of course our little cats. Next slide, please. And so when we look at species like coyotes, it's really important to identify and recognize what their roles are in the community. So their ecological and social benefits come from their presence. They're also used in ceremonial purposes with our native peoples. And so when we look at the role that they fill, their ecological role, it's very significant in keeping our ecosystems very balanced. And they will be in an area that is highly, has a high population of rodents. And that's one of the wonderful things, is that they do consume copious amounts of small rodents, which are tick host species. So the zoonotic, I mean, that's one of the great benefits. And they're a species that is researched quite a bit across North America. Next, please. And so signs that are left behind by coyotes, I'm sure some of you listeners tonight have seen coyote tracks in the snow or mud. And that's what we use as indicators when we're doing field work and investigations and research. We're looking at the size of their, you know, their size of their territory and their patterns of movement. And so there's a lot of different ways that we know if coyotes are in an area besides just seeing them. Next slide, please. And the coyote scat. So we use that to analyze what they're consuming. And that also is a great indication. That's their information highway. So that's not only telling your domestic dog that they're in the area, but they also, that's an indicator for coyotes that might be thinking they could set up house in that same landscape. And that one's all full of fruit, as you can see. Next slide, please. And so with coyotes, like most canids, even including fox, not so much though, their vocalizations are their canid GPS. So everything in coyote world is about leaving their sense and speaking to one another, making sure that transient coyotes aren't coming through, and their repertoire of communication is amazing. And they're again often overestimated, and that's called the bow jest effect, because people say, I heard, oh my gosh, 10 coyotes, and then they find out it was only 2. I'm not sure if that will play. Will that play the sound?
No.
I'm not sure about
No.
that. No, that's okay.
No.
So go back. Just go yep. Okay. And so one more thing. That's fine. So they're not vocalizing when they're hunting and foraging. They are vocalizing absolutely to identify danger, find other members in their family for defense, and especially if dogs are running loose in an area, you might hear coyotes barking during the daytime, especially around the pups or a den. Okay, next slide, please. And so we're into the most significant time for young coyote families. And as you can see, there's a little head popping up to the left and another one. This mom actually had 5 pups. And this is at the base of a huge long yard. And so this is a seasonal milestone that is quite meaningful for coyotes, but they're also at a heightened vigilance when it comes to their young families. And that's the den to the, that's the mound for the den. Next slide, please. And so coyotes are monogamous when left to thrive. And so they are very, very loyal to one another. And oftentimes a male that's lost a partner can actually remain transient afterwards. So it's pretty amazing that they're able to, and they do, and they don't stray at all. And it's an incredible characteristic for this animal. Next slide, please. And so getting right into the biology, you'll see an actual coyote den there, and the female's inside. Her head is at the bottom near the soil. And so coyotes are capable of breeding within the first year, but there's a lot of factors that dictate whether a female and a male will mate and become, mated pairs. First of all, the health and wellness. If there's no territory, they're not going to start a family. And so early spring, they're mating in February, and then early springtime, she's finding a den. It could be an old one, or it could be a new den. And so they have alternate den sites, and she will choose that. They'll be active usually dusk and dawn, but coyotes are out in the daytime too, like many other animal species. And probably the most significant detail and characteristic about coyote families is that they maintain a family, a home range, their own territory. And that's really important when they're raising their family, which could be anywhere from 2 to 10 pups, average 5, but we did have a family that had 19. Next slide, please. And so coyote parents, they co-parent, and they might have young from last year, one of their, one from the litter from last year that will come back and actually help mom and dad raise those young pups. And so the dad plays a huge role. He's feeding the mom while she's nursing the pups in the den. And both parents will regurgitate food for their young ones till they're able to actually eat solid food. And so the pups are weaned at about 6 weeks of age. They're going to be exploring outside of that den. And without the adults, without mom and dad, it's extremely difficult for coyotes to grow up and reach all their developmental milestones to become successful coyotes. So we want them to have the parents to teach them the life skills and how to avoid people and all of those things. And so they're going to teach their young too about marking their territory, urine, scat, and how to defend their home range. Okay, next slide, please. And so these pups are born atricial, which means that they're completely reliant on their mom. And so if mom is killed, then these pups obviously would die because dad can't provide that nourishment of milk. The next slide, please. And so these pups now, they're almost ready. They're venturing around the mouth of the den. The ears will be coming up too. So their eyes were closed, their ears are down, and after about 10 to 12 days, then their ears are up, and they're going to start moving around inside that den. And mom is still nursing, so she needs dad to help with the food. Next slide, please. And there's a great example of mom feeding. And that will take place till about 6 weeks. They'll try to push the limit and want a little more, but mom will start weaning them off. Next slide, please. And they're starting to come out of the den. And so this is sometimes where there can be some interactions with domestic dogs, especially if they're off leash. This is a vulnerable time for these babies, and they're actually vulnerable to birds of prey. So a great horned owl or a hawk could actually utilize the coyote pups at this age as a food source too. So they're starting to explore. Next slide, please. And now they're also going to be being readied to go into the rendezvous site. Okay, next slide, please. And so oftentimes, this is when community members that are concerned for these young coyote pups, they think that mom and dad, they've been abandoned. And as I mentioned earlier, that's one of the huge myths. Mom and dad do not abandon. Like all other wildlife species, they're not leaving their babies behind. This is what we call a rendezvous site or a safe zone. And so they'll be waiting out there. They're away from the den now. Doesn't have to be too far. And mom and dad will be bringing food back for them or little toys or trinkets. They bring balls and feathers and different things, and the pups will be playing and trying to, gain confidence. So their developmental stage, if you think about last year when the family moved the pups to that culvert, they had about a 3-week period where they had to develop, consume a lot of food, and then they were ready to follow mom and dad away from the culvert area. Next, please. And so now they're out following mom and dad. So they're learning how to appropriately hunt and what it's like to chase grasshoppers. They're playing, they're foraging, but they're watching what mom and dad are doing. And so it's really important. You'll see up in the left-hand corner, the tails are up because mom caught a little rabbit and the pups are trying to figure out what to do with that rabbit. Next slide, please. And so we call the eastern coyote adaptive omnivores, even though they're classified as carnivora, because they eat such a diverse diet. And so we also refer to them as keystone facilitators. They're a keystone species. So when they're present in a landscape, the ecosystems are healthy. And they're intelligent, their adaptive nature, they're so resourceful. And with their sense of smell and hearing, so that coyote there, that eastern coyote, you can see the ears forward, the eyes down, the face down, and that coyote is getting ready to pounce on a field vole. And they can eat anything from nuts to snails, fruit, dead animals, small rodents, and they eat the zoonotic disease hosts, right, that carry ticks. So they're contributing, like fox do and birds of prey and opossum, to taking those species out of the landscape, and they can help us out in that way. Next slide, please. And they also, as I mentioned, are great at eating dead animals. And there's a lot of other species in our urban scape that do too. But this coyote, Big Red, was eating a deer that had been hit by the railway, by the train. And that deer was cleaned up in 3 days by Big Red and his family. Next slide, please. And so coyotes are the masters, and quietly, navigating through our communities, they connect green spaces. They're able to eke out a living with a high volume of small mammals. And that's why it's really important. You might not even know that a coyote is living near you in a green space. And that's why we always advise folks, just remember when you're bringing your little dog out, make sure that you accompany and keep your cats indoors. But they utilize many, many green spaces, and Oakville is such a beautiful beautiful, landscape for these animals and other species. And so there's lots of green space and corridors for them to utilize. Next, please. And so remember, and that's a great picture of an eastern coyote crossing the road. They learn and they teach those skills to their young, and they wait for the lights to turn. They are absolutely amazing at, working their way through the community. And so when there's infrastructure change, it not only impacts us as residents, but it also impacts the wildlife. And so if fences are put up or, fields are removed, they have to adjust to that. Next, please. And so, origins of encounters, conflict, and behavior. This is a huge one because many of you folks probably have heard of stories or maybe had a negative experience. This one is a perfect example of a coyote family that had to move the den. It was actually bulldozed over, and she moved the pups to an area of a home where the folks were away, and so she thought this was a safe place. And so oftentimes there's an elevation in encounters when people with dogs off leash are able to invade a den site, deliberate and indirect feeding, public and private sites, and misinterpreting behavior. The resources that are available to the community in Oakville are absolutely fabulous. And I, would encourage everyone to make sure that they read the literature and make sure that you report if there's feeding going on. Okay, next, please. And so coyote wellness and behavior, I know Caitlin will be venturing into this area a little bit more. But as I mentioned earlier, fragmenting the family, if there's a death or disruption, there's going to be death of pups, but there's also the instability of the family. And so once a family is fragmented, it's very, very tough, and there can be behaviors that we see changes in terms of they're maybe having to venture out more and hunt, or there's dispersal risk. They have to navigate into new territory. And so if they're exposed to poisons, neonicotinoids, any kind of rodent toxins that builds up, they are susceptible then to sarcoptic mange. And they're also susceptible to a lot of what our domestic dogs get, and vehicle trauma. So I'm looking forward to Caitlin going over some of the rescues that her team has done. And so if mom and dad are removed from the family before young pups understand how to hunt and survive on their own, that can have a huge impact on their mortality rate. Next, please. And so that's just a slide. That'll be available later, but that persists. Poisons, rat poisons persist throughout the whole food chain, and it builds up in organs, and there can be internal bleeding. So the food chain, we just, hope that folks would think of a different way to wildlife proof and remove unwelcome wildlife versus poison. Next, please. And so establishing healthy boundaries. So when we look at no, that's okay. You can keep it back. Go ahead. It's fine. You can go ahead. Thanks. So the wildlife hotspots, that's probably the biggest challenge we see in communities is folks maybe not understanding that part of coexisting with wildlife is making sure that we are establishing those healthy boundaries. And pretty much anywhere that humans are, pathways and trail systems, cemeteries, empty homes that are left while folks are out of the country, dog walking locations, leash-free parks, outdoor feral cat feeding if the food's not removed, and construction sites. Actually, the workers that are on site feeding the wildlife. These are all wildlife hotspots that we find in communities. In quiet cemeteries and industrial sites, they love that territory because there's plethora of wildlife, and oftentimes people are feeding the squirrels and they get really chubby and they're easier prey for coyotes and fox. Next slide, please. And so this was a home that was left empty all winter long, and Mom, this was the family I told you that had 19 pups. So Mom ended up, establishing a den there. But within the first few months, she had lost almost half of her pups. So that's a great example. If you have spaces under your deck, you need to make sure you seal them up. Okay, next, please. And so when we are thinking about wildlife proofing and bringing our lovely pets out for their last night duty, remember that coyotes and fox climb, birds fly, and your dog can dig out, or maybe they're already squeezing out of the fence in the backyard. And so we think about, our presentations tonight are about coyotes, but we can't look at the ecosystem as a separate entity. All of these animals are part of the Oakville community, and they're very capable, but they don't need our handouts. Next, please. And so this is a very actually popular photo now, because this particular coyote is being fed just awful, harmful food. And I think it says it all. I support my own family. Your handouts are harmful. If there's an animal in distress and they need to be captured and receive medical attention, that's one thing. But you don't need to feed animals, especially coyotes, fox. They are such capable hunters and foragers. Next slide, please. And so the human food is unhealthy. A lot of people feed wildlife, photographers, well-meaning individuals, folks that believe that they need to feed them. And not only is it a hazard to the human, because the animals communicate by biting a lot of times, but it's the food. And so you have one person that goes to a parking lot, puts down food, the next person comes doing everything right within the bylaw, and yet these animals are starting to come around, and that's a really good example of how that can happen, including your backyard. Next slide, please. And it also changes behavior. And so, first of all, hot dogs are not good food for canid species, but it increases their proximity tolerance to people. And once the wildlife becomes food conditioned, then we have to work on aversion conditioning techniques. And sometimes it can take a little bit of time, as long as folks stop the feeding and we can deliver those aversion conditioning techniques. So animals will also exhibit demand behavior. They might approach a person because they're expecting to have that handout. So we just don't want to put the wildlife in that position. And it's not fair to the neighbors, and it's not fair for the next visitors that might go to a park and they have no intentions of feeding the wildlife. But now all of a sudden, maybe a coyote's coming closer to the table, or a raccoon, or a fox. Next, please. And so that patch is the famous coyote that I said was being hand-fed. She's just curled up waiting for the food to be delivered by the gentleman in that park. And so this is exactly what we don't want to see. It's not appropriate boundaries. It's not healthy boundaries. And there was a lot of dogs off leash in that park too. Next slide, please. And so the history of the displaced coyote family, probably a lot of you remember this coyote family last year. And so the mom and dad moved the pups not once, but twice, 3 times before they were actually ready to venture out on their own. And so this family exhibited some very, very defensive and protective behavior towards certain dogs. And it ended up that dogs were the stimulus. They were not interested in people, but they were very, very concerned about the safety and well-being of their coyotes. But the community rallied. It was an incredible experience. We met really great folks in the community, and this was a big learning curve, I think, for everybody. And if, coyotes don't forget. So if your dog's attacked and bitten a coyote or grabbed one of the pups and, killed it, they're going to remember the dog that did that. Just like our dogs like certain people and they don't like other people. And so they have great memories, and we want to make sure that we just let them do what they need to do in appropriate locations. Next slide, please. And so I'll just draw attention to the far right corner. So this is a mom with her pups. And what is wrong with this photo is that this is actually a parking lot, and folks thought it was really cool and neat to start feeding the coyotes from the cars. And so in this instance, mom actually brought her pups there to get the food from these vehicles that would pull over. Inappropriate, unsafe for this family, and really implications for them thinking that it's okay to be near humans. The animal services responded. There was aversion conditioning done, and it only took 2 times, and this mom never came back to that parking lot, and there were fines given out for the people that were feeding. So if you pull into a parking lot and coyotes or fox are hanging around, please report that to the town, and they can do that investigation, because this is how these encounters occur, and there's escalation in behavior. Next slide, please. And so dogs are a threat. Dogs are a predator. They might as well be another coyote, and it doesn't matter the size of the dog. But as you can see, this dog is off leash in a leashed area and in pursuit of that coyote. So the coyote now is fleeing, and the coyote is not luring that dog. That dog is in pursuit. And so if that coyote goes back into the area where the den is, then there could be an issue between this dog and coyote. Next slide, please. And so people with dogs and coyotes, oftentimes this time of year, it is not uncommon for a coyote to make sure that you're leaving the area. If the pups are now, this time of year, the pups will be out of the den. And so once pups leave the den, they don't use the dens anymore until the following year, when mom and dad have, if they do have another litter. So remember that dens are only used that first 6-week period when mom is feeding, nursing, and then they don't use the den anymore. They have to learn how to live outside of the den. And so when you have your dogs, remember, even if it's a leash-free area, there's wildlife around. And it's probably advisable, if you know that coyotes or fox are in the area, to leash your dog up and use a short leash. And know your surroundings. Don't walk around with headphones on, because you want to be able to hear anything that's going on behind you and around you. And it's really, really important. Please contact the town if you see any feeding going on, or there's garbage bins that happen to be overflowing. And remember, when your dog is chasing wildlife, whether it's a deer or a coyote or a fox, if that animal turns around, your dog most likely will run back to you. And that's when you can have escalation in an encounter. And it's just not, it's not good to allow our family pets to do that. Next slide, please. So we'll get into the aversion conditioning, and then that's going to be summing up my portion of this this evening. So keeping coyotes away. We do have this on the website, and also Oakville has fabulous resources, hazing videos that are available. So aversion conditioning, we we work in Oakville Humane Society and also with other animal services, and we do aversion conditioning when we know that coyotes have been food conditioned. And so the best thing you can do is, first of all, make sure that you've wildlife proof and you're not attracting these animals to your property. And that means your bird feeder, there's all that food underneath, all the little rodents and things that go and feed there, they're going to be coming by for those prey species. Your loud and assertive voice, your body language, whistles can be effective, but if there's sports fields nearby, they will not be. And so never throw anything at wildlife, but you can use sticks and rocks, whatever is available. And seasonal water hoses, water gun, shaking and fill a can with coins, popping an umbrella, and snapping a big green garbage bag and fill it with air. And so preventing and being aware and carrying that big green garbage bag is very, very helpful. Next slide, please. And so the high fives for safety, this is what we do in our school education programs, but also with audiences like yourself. If you think of those high fives, you can always stop and pick up a small child or pet. If there is, you can use that same method too if there's a dog approaching you, but standing still and then quickly using assertive gesturing is going to scare the coyote. And shouting and waving your arms above your head and clapping and making loud noises, snapping that bag at this point, popping the umbrella, slowly backing away and making sure that you share your experience. Put that report in and make sure that you never turn your back and run from any canine, because sometimes the instinct kicks in and they might follow you. That's not the same as shadowing when they're trying to get you to move away from a den area. But you don't want to turn your back and run. You need to be very strong and assertive. Okay, next slide. And when to haze. So as I mentioned, in parking lots, and if you're yelling and doing assertive movements from inside a vehicle, it's not going to mean anything, because people inside vehicles, for the most part, could have been feeding, right? So you can use that green garbage bag. If you notice a coyote in the parking lot when you're going back to your vehicle, you can use that those hazing techniques too. But you wouldn't be hazing an animal in a location where, like a natural scape like this field here. And pups and parents should never be hazed. Just slowly move out of the area. Next slide, please. And so, again, as I mentioned, we would not be doing hazing with this coyote family. Okay, next slide, please. And the reason being is that it takes special training to do aversion conditioning when there's certain situations that we might be offering interference or assistance with. It's not something that the general public should ever do, is to harass parents with their young. And so I know the town of Oakville, it's an honor for Coyote Watch Canada to work in partnership with the community and also the town officials. And, you know, we thank you very much for contributing to our research and reports and all the information. And we just want to extend on behalf of Coyote Watch Canada, thank you so much. And thanks for listening to our segment of the evening tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leslie. That was great. For the members of the public that are watching, I wanted to draw to your attention, and the screen should come up for you shortly, is that you can submit questions, over the phone with the number that's displayed on the screen, and that is 905-815-6095. For those that had pre-registered, in your meeting, you do have a Q&A feature that you can submit questions. So I would encourage you to go ahead and submit questions that way. We are looking, obviously, there's more information to be presented throughout. And so if your questions aren't answered right away, we will be, hoping that those will be answered throughout the presentation and/or will be answered at the end of the presentation. I looked to my colleague to see if there's any questions that have been submitted through Q&A, and it looks like that's a no. So thank you very much. There were a few questions submitted prior to the presentation, and so just via email. And so I would take a moment to ask one of the questions that I know we will not be addressing throughout the presentation, and so it's a good question to start with. And the question is, why is it that the town outlines ways for residents to deter coyotes, yet encourages coyotes to live in areas they designate as woodlots by effectively doing nothing to clean up these properties, such as a specific park that they border? So really referring to parklands and brush that has been put there or not necessarily cleaned up. So I would ask our colleague Donna Hales to maybe answer this question for us.
Thanks, Margaret. Can you hear okay?
Yes.
Okay. So as Leslie mentioned in her presentation, coyotes are going to be in Oakville. We have appropriate habitat. We aren't going to be able to not have them here. But the idea is that we do want to avoid conflict. We don't want them in places such as residential areas. So you saw some of the den sites and some of the things that attract coyotes, such as food. Shelter is a big one, which some of these brush sites do offer. So on residential properties, we strongly encourage people to not have that type of environment because it will start to attract coyotes. We do want to keep them in naturalized areas, which is in our parks and areas that are more naturalized, ravines. So that's one part of it. The other part is that from an ecological perspective and a forest health perspective, those types of things, brush left around, things that perhaps might look untidy in a residential area, are absolutely critical for maintaining our forests. They put nutrients back in the earth. It does provide not just for coyotes, but for other animals, appropriate habitat. And it really is critical if we want to have our forests healthy that we leave those there. So there is a bit of a difference, and that is why we take that approach.
Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
So I do have one other question that is sort of a little bit relating to this, but why did the town remove equipment from a specific park that allowed monitoring of the coyotes? So again, I would refer to Donna. She has a little bit of background, and Donna, just for those of you that are not knowledgeable, Donna did for many years assist and oversee with the coyote program. So she's well versed in all things coyote. So Donna, if you can maybe try to assist with that question.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So there was never any equipment for monitoring coyotes per se in any of the town's parks. What might have been mistaken for that, we have over the years partnered with Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, which is the provincial government, to assist with their rabies program. So we did allow them to use some of their equipment, both to monitor animals, primarily foxes, skunks, and raccoons, and also to allow space for baiting for vaccines for these animals to make sure that we were supporting prevention of rabies in Oakville parks. And so that might have been that. Over the, I think, really last few years, especially since partnering with Coyote Watch Canada and certainly with Oakville and Milton Humane Society, we have had some investigations going on in times when there have been conflicts with coyotes or potential conflicts. Some of them were, for example, mange. That was, I think, about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 2016, 2017, that we had a lot of issues. So the Humane Society did have equipment in some of the parks, some of the naturalized areas, attempting to try and capture some of the coyotes that were sick and did have mange. So that might have been another one, but we never had any sort of active program around monitoring coyotes with equipment in parks or doing anything with them. So.
And just to add, and I'm not sure if
Yeah.
Donna had already mentioned, but in addition, we can confirm that the Ministry of Natural Resources have never had any active program within Oakville.
Correct.
Right. So at this point, I think we'll move on to our next presenter. So I'd like to introduce Caitlin Jones, and she is the Manager of Animal Services from the Humane Society. And Caitlin will be speaking today about the role of the Humane Society with respect to wildlife in Oakville. So thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. Just in the essence of time, I understand that we're a little bit short at this point, so I'm going to whiz through this a little bit, but happy to take any questions at the end. Like Margaret said, my name is Caitlin Jones. I've been with the Humane Society for, I guess, approaching 11 years now, and do have extensive history working with wildlife, including coyotes. So I'm just going to start off by speaking to the Oakville and Milton Humane Society's role with wildlife. So we employ a team of animal control officers that are trained to respond to calls for sick and injured wildlife. That may look like physical injuries, illnesses, as well as orphaned wildlife, potentially abandoned. Anything in need of medical attention or general welfare concerns would be things that we would respond to. We do have that service that is offered for the town of Oakville 24/7. So we do have active shifts and on-calls that are able to respond to any emergencies and animal in need. And we are contracted by the town of Oakville to fulfill those duties. And specifically speaking to our role with coyotes, like I mentioned, our mandate is to handle calls for sick and injured animals only. That said, it's very, very natural for individuals to think of the Humane Society as top of mind when it comes to any animal-related question. So it's really, really important that we act as an educational resource and reference for the public. Specifically for coyotes, speaking to Leslie's presentation as well as what the town's going to touch on as well, we are well equipped with all of that information and experience to guide members of the public if they have any questions, if they ever give us a call, and if they have questions about things that we may not have the answer for, we are a really good hub for directing that information to other organizations that can find those answers for you. In terms of coyotes, like I mentioned, we would be responding to calls for sick coyotes. Primarily, we would see that in maybe distemper, as well as most predominantly sarcoptic mange. And like Donna touched on just recently, we've had in the past couple of years, we did have a bit of a mange outbreak where we were actively trying to capture the coyotes to have them treated. The fun thing about mange is that it's very, very treatable. It's just figuring out how we're going to be able to contain those animals to get them the quick help that they need to bring them back into to their natural environment. We also respond to calls for obviously injured coyotes or in any form of predicament. So as you can see in the top corner there, we do have quite, I would say, popular local coyote that we refer to as Jughead, who actually got a peanut butter container stuck on his head this past fall that we were chasing for several days and were eventually able to capture and then alleviate from distress and send to rehab as well. So that was quite a very positive story for the community. Obviously, we will respond to calls for coyotes that are out and about, potentially hit by car, injured, that kind of thing. That's the service that we would respond to. Naturally, as you can understand, coyotes are very elusive and don't necessarily want to be caught. So that task is quite difficult, and I'll get into that in a second. One of the other main responsibilities that we do is we are responsible for enforcing the town animal control bylaw. So included in that would pertain to issues such as off-leash dogs, animals roaming at large. So if we have specific areas that have high reports for coyotes, or we're aware of coyotes in the area, we will set up patrols in those locations to monitor for dogs off leash to make sure that those issues get resolved. Okay, so now we ask the age-old question that we've spoken to what we would try to catch, is how to catch a coyote. And I've been asking myself this for years, but in the next slide, I'll show you some of the success that we've had. So part of what I want to speak to today is also debunking some of the common assumptions as to what the public can perceive as a possibility for capturing coyotes. What you can see here are a variety of actual photos that we've taken for coyote rescues that we've done here. So it's very easy to assume or consider what we often see on TV, and I think most predominantly that would be tranquilizer guns, things like that. So more realistically speaking, it's not as easy as it looks, and it's not something that just takes place the way it would on TV. It requires really, really highly trained individuals, and is not always the most ideal, specifically when we're dealing with coyotes that are sick or injured. Coyotes with mange specifically, just to kind of give you a little bit of context with that. Mange is like a parasite under the skin. You'll see them scratching themselves constantly, often causing open wounds. They end up running a little bit of a high fever, so they don't exactly know what's going on. They smell really, really bad, so their prey know that they're around, so they're not able to find food as easily, so they become a little bit more opportunistic. They're going to be eating what's accessible to them. You might see them out and about more frequently. For example, laying out on hot driveways in the summer, just trying to maintain that heat, and just trying to kind of survive basically at that point. So with that said, they're very sick, so if you were to go forward with something like a tranquilizer gun, getting a proper dosage, that actually might really affect the coyote in a way that could be lethal. We don't have a veterinarian on staff, and we are not able to discharge firearms in the town of Oakville. So it's pretty much an eliminated resource that we can use to capture them, and it's not as effective. Something else to consider when it comes to tranquilizing is that it makes use of a sedative, and that's not as instantaneous as it looks like in the movies. So that actually takes quite a bit of time to register in a coyote. So what ends up happening is it gets hit, it startles, it bolts, and then you have about approximately 20 minutes to find that coyote wherever it may be before it wears off and is back to square one. So we try to use other methods that have proven to be very effective for us. And as you can see in the photos here, a lot of it means our own feet and a catch pole and nets, as well as live traps. We use descenting spray. We try to camouflage the traps as much as possible to make it look like the most natural environment. And then not to be too upfront, but we do have to utilize bait for the coyotes that would be like their natural food source. So we did try some KFC chicken and that didn't work, so we had to move on to a more gruesome source, which would be something like roadkill, and that's actually proven to work quite well. So we do have in this slide several examples of our coyote successes in terms of capture. And again, just to reiterate, we wouldn't be looking to capture these guys unless they really, really needed our help. So since 2014, I've pulled some of the numbers. Obviously, we are the Oakville and Milton Humane Society, but these are specific to just the coyotes that we've contained in Oakville, just to be specific there. So we've got the column of the coyotes that we've brought in that were alive, so they would have been sick or injured and alive. Then deceased, PTS stands for humanely euthanized, put to sleep. And then rehab, it means that it was transferred to a rehabilitation center. So as you can see, those numbers may seem small, but they're really significant to us because that typically means several days of us working in large numbers to use positional advantage to be able to contain an animal that doesn't want to be caught. And oftentimes, you know, sometimes if the animal is not able to overcome the injury will start to overcome the animal and they slow down a bit. So we're really persistent in making sure that we can do the best that we can and do them right to get them back to their natural habitat, to make sure that everything stays the way that it should. And then another really, really important component that I wanted to go over today is just our personal responsibility as pet owners. It's really important that we consider what we need to be looking out for to promote positive coexistence with our natural wildlife. So some of the tips that I have in terms of dogs and cats, I shouldn't have to repeat this, but I will. Always keep dogs on a leash. There is a bylaw in Oakville that they have to be leashed without, unless they're on your own property or in a designated leash-free zone. And cats, they're not permitted to be roaming off of your property. We say avoid dusk and dawn because that's the most frequent times, although as we've learned today, coyotes are obviously going to be out and about whenever the food source is available to them, so there might be different times of day that you see them. Leslie spoke to hazing, so carry deterrence, the plastic bag method, the umbrella method, open the umbrella to appear bigger, things that are not going to be seen in an everyday coyote life that might be a bit different, that would be perplexing to them, that you would want to deter them to be uncomfortable around you. Find a walking buddy for you and your dog, and then I can't stress enough to always supervise dogs when they're alone in backyards. Cats, again, don't let them roam. Do not leave cats unattended on a tie-out either. That's not really helpful. And just to stress across the board, coyotes are only one of countless threats that outdoor cats and roaming dogs will face, again, such as cars, poison, birds of prey or raptors, that kind of thing. So anyway, like I said, I wanted to make this as short as possible, so I'm happy to refer us back to any questions if you have them. So thank you so much for your time today.
So again, you'll see on the screen there is an opportunity to submit some questions, but while you're thinking about any questions you might have, I actually have a question to refer back to Caitlin, because Caitlin in her presentation did speak to some of the coyotes that are captured do end up going to rehabilitation, just based on the fact that they're sick or injured, and so they just need a safe place to get better. And so, Caitlin, I just would like you to describe what happens. So, you know, the process under which, once you've captured that animal, it goes to rehab. What happens when it's better?
So it's a little bit more in depth. Obviously, any animal that is going to be eligible for rehab is going to be assessed. So we have registered veterinary technicians on site, and we also work with a lot of rehabs in our area who will determine whether that coyote or wild animal is eligible for rehab, at which point they would take it there to receive whatever treatment. It's very low contact. They're specially licensed places that offer services that are not going to be invasive or tamper with behavior or anything like that. There's no contact. They make sure that they are treated for whatever issues they're suffering from, and then they're released within 1 kilometer of where they were picked up, so that they are back in their natural habitat where they can thrive, where they are familiar, and not to cause any issues of unknown disease transfer for any illnesses or viruses that could be, spread across Canada. However, they would be obviously potentially, depending on the rehab, they may vaccinate. I'm not 100% sure.
And so actually, I'd like to maybe refer a question quickly to Leslie, just to sort of piggyback on what Caitlin had mentioned. So there is, as part of the process, after the rehabilitation has taken place and the coyote is re-released back into their original area where they were captured, it's really to speak to the science of why the coyote is re-released back into the habitat under which they were captured. There are regulations under the Ministry of Natural Resources that do require the animal, the coyote in this case, to be re-released within 1 kilometer or as close to, dependent if there's different variations like a commercial industrial mall, and that happens to be that 1 mile radius or 1 kilometer radius. It may be 1.2 kilometers, but in any event, Leslie, can you speak to a little bit of that science?
So, the ministry has that regulation in place, as Margaret alluded to, for the scientific side of things. But if we look at the ecology and the biology of this species, that's their home range. And so they maintain territory that they defend against transient coyotes that might come through. And that's where they learn and understand where all of their food sources are, their water, their shelter. And so we would not ever want anyone to get the idea that relocating would be acceptable, because even though a coyote could have a territory that could be 5 kilometers, that could be 10 kilometers, maybe even a little bit larger, depending on the ecosystem and what food sources are there, it just isn't, it's not, number one, it's not fair to those animals, and they will try to make their way back home. But also there could be already a resident coyote family established in the area. And so it's better to keep those families intact in their home range, their territory. The community gets to know those individual animals, and also the coyotes, it's their territory. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Leslie. That was a great answer. So the next question that has come in through the Q&A, is relating to diseases that various wildlife may transfer potentially to, maybe a domestic animal. So for this particular question, I would refer that to Donna. I think that she has some good information to share regarding this.
Thanks, Margaret. Yeah, without, I won't read the entire piece off, but certainly I know that's something that people are concerned about. While coyotes are not a known vector for things like rabies, they are a canid, so things like distemper, for example, is something that dogs can get. They would have to be in close contact with the coyote, but certainly coyotes do have the capacity to spread diseases, which is one of the key reasons that the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry does have regulations in place why they don't like to have coyotes move around, because what it can do is move those diseases around the province or further, which can cause a lot of problems. So if you keep things contained, usually populations can manage those diseases locally. They become just something that's easily manageable, but you start spreading it, that's where we start to get into trouble. So we can't really speak to specific diseases because none of us here are vets, and we don't want to take that, provide any information if it's not from a professional source. But it is important to make sure that we don't look at relocating coyotes as a potential way to deal with them. Again, that because of spreading diseases, which we really do not want to do.
Thank you, Donna. I have one last question before we move on to the next part of the presentation, and it's just relating to regulations regarding cats, and those cats specifically that are let outdoors. We do have an animal control bylaw that prohibits cats to roam at large, but I will refer this to Caitlin from the Humane Society, as it's her group that enforces this.
Yes, so that's correct, Margaret. We do respond to calls and concerns for cats roaming at large. So if there are any concerns or information, reports essentially, then they can contact the Humane Society directly, and we will assign that as a case for follow-up. We do obviously require understanding where that cat resides, so if we have that information, it's even more helpful. Alternatively, if the cat's friendly and it can be contained, we respond to calls for contained stray cats as well. So if there's ever a concern and we know that there's individuals that are allowing their cats to roam, we're happy to take that information and follow up to make sure that that is addressed.
Thank you, Caitlin. So at this point, I think we'll move on to the final portion of the presentation, and really that's with respect to the Coyote program in Oakville. So as you've heard through the presentation, and also by having our a couple of our partners present to assist with the presentation, it reinforces the program that we have in place. We work at the town with several partners, and one of our main partners is the Oakville Humane Society, and really any call that ever comes in is for sick and injured goes to the Humane Society. We also work with other external groups, such as we have Coyote Watch Canada, we have the MNR, we have various other groups, and I will speak to this in a couple minutes. But the other part of the program is really how we manage the reports that come in. A major part of it is depending on the type of report, such as if we receive a report of a sighting in a community, we will look at how many reports of sightings we receive in that community and whether there's an opportunity at that point then to distribute flyers to the community and an opportunity to educate those members of the community to understand that there are wildlife within the area and ways to, ensure that their pets and, their property they're able to sort of live within the community quite safely. Otherwise, what we really look at is if there's a more serious interaction, that a report that comes in that is more so perhaps a coyote or wildlife that comes closer in proximity to a human, we will look at ensuring that we do a more in-depth investigation. And so that may be that we send an officer out. We may engage some of our community partners, such as Coyote Watch Canada or the Humane Society, to go and review the area, look for potential, as an example, a den site, look for other identifiers that would lead us to believe that there are coyotes present. We also will look at situations where food may be an attractant for the wildlife. So we address that through the investigation. So we'll look at trail systems, parklands. Is there opportunity to either put better garbage cans in place, as a simple example, so like a closed garbage can, or whether we should post signs to alert the community that there is wildlife present. We do have specific signs for many different species, but we do have one specifically for coyotes that we have on many of our trails and or in our parks to alert patrons of the parks to the fact that there are coyotes present, and just to be alert and aware of it. Of course, we have our reporting system. That's a really good opportunity for anyone who experiences any sort of interaction with a coyote, whether it be a simple sighting, or if it's something that the coyote comes, closer to your pet or human, any type of interaction, we would encourage you to report that. And again, I'll go through how you can report that a little bit later. But that's really helpful information for us, because we will take that information and we'll look at areas, again, to where we may have to provide extra concentration of education, perhaps assistance with hazing, and, maybe look at improving signage, looking at perhaps, looking at the garbage cans. There may be also other instances where there are actual people feeding the animals, and we really want to be aware that, of those situations, and we will move forward. We have several bylaws that can address that type of behavior, and they're really, at this point, we have our lot maintenance bylaw that can address any sort of undesirable material that's left in yards, and really it can be anything from having long grass. It's a great spot for coyotes to find then small rodents and other attractants that they, that would be part of the food chain for them, and then also obviously there are some properties that become even more so unmaintained, and so they may have composts that are not properly contained in a closed compost container, or there may be other garbage or debris strewn around that become very great spots for coyotes to find, small animals such as chipmunks or rats that, again, are part of the food chain and part of their food supply. So we do look at all these opportunities. Part of it is also to look at opportunities to educate the public and the community on the reasons why it's so important to keep your animals on leash, and to watch over, especially if you have smaller animals in the backyard. And it's really to ensure that you have those animals under the care and control of your person at all times. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, we have all sorts of wildlife in Oakville. It's not just coyotes, we have foxes, we have large birds of prey. So it's really to sort of make sure that you have an opportunity to react if there is some sort of other issue that arises, whether a bird swoops down, whether whether there's a raccoon on the fence, all sorts of things can happen. And so it's really just to remind the community that this is exercising good citizenship. It is ensuring that your pets are safe, and it's ensuring that the wildlife are. As mentioned earlier, I think Leslie or Caitlin mentioned it, that really or perhaps even Donna at this point, it was really, we want to have the wildlife stay in the ecosystems that support them, and that's really the ravines, the sort of their large green spaces. So I did already, to a certain extent, go over the roles and responsibilities of our partners, but I will take an opportunity just to go over it once again, because it's really important that we all understand we all have a part in this role, in this group and this community. And so the town of Oakville obviously has our Coyote program, but we rely on all the partners to make it work. And so as mentioned, we have Caitlin and the Humane Society that looks after our sick and injured. So if you ever have a call regarding any type of injured wildlife on the side of the road, give them a call. If you have a concern about, a dead animal, obviously give them a call. But really any question about a coyote that seems healthy should be coming to the town as your first point of contact. It sometimes gets a little bit confusing, and I think that people sometimes call the Humane Society because it's a wild animal, but really when we do talk about coyotes, it really is that first point of contact should be the town. We do obviously rely on our property owners, as I mentioned earlier, to ensure that there's no attractants that such as food sources or big piles of brush or what have you left on their property. We really want to remind any property owners that should be removed, and that then will deter any coyotes or any other wildlife from entering the property. Also, again, to ensure that if you have pets, more so dogs, to keep them on a leash unless you're in a leash-free park. And those are really great places to take your dogs for a very safe environment where they can roam free, again, under your care and control. And again, when you're in your backyard, keep an eye out for your especially small dogs, but all animals, all dogs, because you really want to just keep an eye out. As I said, anything could happen at any time in terms of a raccoon that is the other night. I was sitting in my backyard and I saw a raccoon just walking along the fence line. And so you just really don't know what you're going to see. And that's one of the great things about living in Oakville, is that we do have such a diverse ecosystem and many different types of wildlife that we coexist with. Of course, we have our external agencies that we rely on mostly for educational resources, but Coyote Watch, we do call in if there is a more in-depth investigation. As you heard earlier, they were quite instrumental in our den site last year and helping to be on site to help the community understand what the coyotes, why they were there, how to live in harmony, how to keep your animals safe. So it really was it was a great asset to have them on site. We also had the Humane Society that assisted with that and some of our officers from enforcement services. So I think that was a great instance where you can see the partnership working. And then, of course, the community. The community, property owners, the community is part of that that group and that we're the team that's working. And so last year, as I said, that the den sites was a really great demonstration of that. The MNR will offer assistance, and they're a great resource for educational pieces, as well as they offer support with regulations. Apart from that, the program really, if anyone out there has ever called the ministry, they will support you with providing regulations and information pertaining to the law, but really the program is run by the town. So they're just there as a resource. And then HRPS, and that being Halton Regional Police, they are one of our partners. And really they're there for the support. If there is an immediate threat to your person, they will be called. They are also the only agency within the town that is eligible to carry firearms and fire them within the town. We do have a firearms bylaw that prohibits that type of activity. So HRPS would be the only ones that ever would be eligible to do that. And so just to give you a bit of an idea, and we talked about it a little bit, I think Leslie talked about it a little bit, and then Donna and Caitlin, but just about the whole idea of trapping and relocating. You know, relocation, we are limited to the area under which we would be able to relocate. It's within the 1 kilometer or within reason, so not much outside of that. You've heard the science earlier that really the coyotes will largely try to go back to wherever their home base was. So, I mean, 1 kilometer really serves the purpose. And that's the law. So really can't do much about that. You know, the other thing is, if we were to trap and relocate and for whatever reason we were allowed to go 100 kilometers from here, it really leaves a void. And it leaves a void for another family to move in, or another coyote, or generally it will be a family though that will move in. So, I mean, regardless of whether you are trapping and relocating, you're always going to have a family that will be present because our ecosystem is so great and it supports wildlife. And so really, the objective isn't met by trapping and relocating. The better objective is to undertake a program of education and support to the community, and for us to have the tools and be equipped to live in harmony with wildlife. The other concern, obviously, as well, is disease transmission. I think Donna spoke to that in the one question earlier, and so we really want to be mindful of that. We just really want to. Oakville, we have our own ecosystem. It involves everything from, you know, the little chipmunks that run down the road to us as people, and we all have a role to play in this. And I think if we can have a great program of education, which I think we have in place, we really can live in harmony. I will reiterate that we are at the town are available if anyone has questions about hazing or about what should I do if this happens, or I saw a family or a den site, what does that mean? Give us a call. We will help support that conversation, and if it means we have to distribute more flyers, or if it means that we have to support you in understanding what hazing is, we will do that. So I want to reassure you that we are here for you. And of course, just to go a little bit into the reporting tool, so this we did speak to a little bit earlier as well, but really what this is it gives you the opportunity that if you see a sighting or something a little bit that you feel is more serious, any type of interaction with a coyote can be reported here. The reports are then subsequently available online as well as a map that all members of the public can see. And basically what that does is it allows you to see where people have seen coyotes in the neighborhood. Now, the red dots aren't reflective of how many coyotes we have in the community, but simply the number of times somebody has seen a coyote. So, but it's really helpful, as I said, to help us understand where there's a concentration of sightings, and obviously there's a family that, that's sort of their range, and then whether there's opportunities at that point to support the community and, as I said, distribute flyers or maybe reach out to the Residents Association or somehow work with the community. So there's opportunity there from the information that is submitted. So I really would encourage you, anytime you see a coyote, even if it's just driving down the street and you saw, oh, I just saw, what was that, a dog or a coyote? And you realize afterwards it was a coyote, submit that report, because it's helpful information. Just as a matter of interest to you, we did receive orders of magnitude in 2019, over 400 reports submitted last year. So, the system's working, and as I said, it is a really, it's helpful information, and we do use it at the town to support the program that we have in place. So I'd like to leave you with some contact details. Of course, by all means, I can also put this on our website. I do believe we have links to most of it. I noticed that I don't have Leslie's information there, but again, I will have that available on our website. And of course, if anybody ever has a question or would like that information, by all means, call us and we'll provide it to you. Again, the Humane Society will take care of your sick and injured. And then at the town, we will take in any of your other concerns regarding and then Coyote Watch is here to support that and provide a lot of scientific information, but then also assistance in, as I said, more in-depth investigations. So I'd like to thank you, everybody, for participating in our first ever virtual meeting. This is a bit of a milestone for us, so I appreciate everyone's patience and availability to participate. It's been really a great opportunity. And so again, I'd like to thank you. And at this point, I'd like to open this up to, again, offering the opportunity for submission of questions. And I'm going to, at this point as well, I think we're going to try and load up the phone number at the bottom of the screen, and I'm going to close the presentation so that we can all kind of see each other. So just give me a moment. Let's see. There we go. I think we'll be able to see the panelists now. So I think we have a couple questions. So I'm going to actually refer this over to Donna, and maybe Donna, you can read out the first question.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Margaret. So we have one question that is, what is the average mortality rate of coyotes in Oakville? Which may be a Leslie question, and I don't know that we can necessarily answer the mortality rate, but maybe she can give a little information, the average lifespan of urban coyotes, that sort of a thing maybe.
Yeah, that'd be great. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. Oh, that's a great question. So within a coyote family, the mortality rate usually is about 70% of the pups within the first year will perish. And so let's say, if you get a family that had mentioned to you, they had a significant number. That's the highest I'd ever seen. Most of the coyote families that we know of, that we've researched, and Donna, I'm sure you can attest to this also, and Caitlin, usually the average is between 2 and 5 pups, but it is pretty tough for them to, make it through. So it's going to be over half. So if you have 2, there might be 1 that survives. And so you've got other issues, though, at play. If one of the parents dies, then there will be also greater risks for the other family members. So mortality rate for coyotes, because Oakville, there is infrastructure taking place. I think the statistics that Caitlin had pulled up, their average lifespan could be anywhere from 4 to 8 years. But, again, with traffic changing and infrastructure, that's going to impact. And, we often hear from folks, even including some of the reports that came in for Oakville, that there was, they had resident coyote would see on a regular basis, and then all of a sudden that coyote was gone. And then we find out later it was hit by a vehicle. So I hope if the lady or gentleman, if I address that question, if not, they can ask it again.
Okay, thanks. And the next one's probably going to go to you, Margaret. I'm just going to combine the two because they're both regarding the coyote reporting system. So if I report a frightening incident with the coyote showing aggressive behavior, should I expect a response? And related to that is, I see coyotes almost daily near my home. Do you want me to report each sighting?
Yes, that's a great question. So the incidents that are reported that are for an interaction that is closer than, give or take, 2 meters, we will follow up with those investigations and those reports. We are undertaking a bit of reworking of the system as well to ensure that the more critical reports are filtered up to staff on an immediate basis so that we can follow up with them. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we really want to address those concerns as they evolve or as they happen, because that's really where we're going to be given the opportunity, again, to work with the community, to help educate, and to really understand what's happening there. And if there is something that is of urgent need, then we can look at, are there attractants, are there food sources, and eliminating. But it's through that addressing the issues as they arise, that will be the best way to support that. So yes, we are looking to address those as soon as possible. And sorry, Donna, the second part?
Yeah, it was just around, do you want every sighting reported if they see the coyote repeatedly?
Right. So yes, I would recommend if you see a coyote day 1 on a Saturday and on a Sunday you see it again, it's a different report. So absolutely, and it could be that it's not on the same street, but it kind of gives us a little bit of an understanding of where that coyote, it's probably the same coyote or a member of that same family, but it gives us an opportunity to kind of understand their patterns. Leslie, do you have maybe something to add to that?
It would be really helpful for folks that are taking the time to do those reports, if you can send in a photograph, because that's how we catalog the individuals within a particular territory. So that information is very helpful. And I think, if coyotes are navigating and using the same corridors, so there you might see a coyote that is regularly coming through an aspect of the community. But if you notice that a coyote is going to a backyard, that's a really, really important report, because that then alerts the town that, you know what, we probably have a food source and maybe the resident isn't even aware. It could be something as simple as, there's fruit accumulating underneath a tree, or maybe there's, rodent problems. So I think, we can't, because you see a coyote every day, it doesn't mean that it's cause for alarm. But if the coyote is hanging around somebody's backyard or lying on the front lawn, then those reports need to go in so the town has that information and can respond. And that's when we can work together to address that.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks. And we do have one more question. This is actually from the caller that asked the mortality question, and she said, that's great, you did answer her question, so thank you, Leslie. Then she follows up with, there's a belief that the numbers of coyotes in this area are increasing. How do we know if this is true? And is there a natural pattern of population control in an urban area?
Is that for me?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Another excellent questions. So there's an older scientific term that used to be bantered about quite a bit, and it's references the carrying capacity. And so there's a natural dispersal with every coyote family. So let's say, for example, one family has a 4-kilometer area. That area is not going to sustain significant number of coyotes. So it might be just the mom and dad that remain in that territory. And so they're dispersing. Some coyotes are going to disperse hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, depending on what landscape's available. And so there isn't ever going to be an overpopulation of coyotes, because they're one of those species that naturally disperse. But that is another great reason, and thank you for asking that question again. That's another great reason why we do not want to be feeding wildlife, because you are encouraging animals to stay in an area that might not naturally support them. And so we want coyotes navigating and finding their own home range. And, that's why, folks, if you do know of people feeding, it's not that you're, tattling on your neighbor, but everybody has to do their part to create this, the wildlife resiliency that's necessary. Because, people complain about having deers. They complain about having a lot of different animal species. So I think that was a really great question. Thank you.
And I'll just say one quick thing, just to build a little bit on that as well. Back to that reason why we don't want, or why relocating is pointless, and also why removing coyotes is pointless, because there are so many that are dispersing on a regular basis. They travel, as Leslie said, hundreds of kilometers. So if there is a territory that is open, they're going to come, and they're going to come fairly quickly. They move long distances. So again, that just really, the town's program is very science-based. It's very factual-based. So we have to work within those confines that really nature provides to us. And I think those are all of our questions that we have right now.
Okay, so that's great. So we'll give you an opportunity still. As I said, the number is at the bottom of the screen, and you'll see that present on your computers or on the live stream. So please take the opportunity to call in, or if you have any further questions, if you're logged in as a participant, to please just use the Q&A feature in Zoom to submit those questions. But some great questions from everyone today, and we really appreciate the input, because that's the reason why we're here. We're here to answer your questions. A little bit different than maybe what we've been used to, but I think this is how it's going to be for the next little while. So, I think that we're going to make a good go of it. And so I think at this point, I would like to take the opportunity to take a moment and ask Donna and Caitlin. There was a really good story that demonstrates exactly all the information that we provided you today. And what the story is, it's the coyote that was present in East Oakville about 3 years ago, and we were receiving reports. People were nervous about the coyote in the neighborhood. And I think it's a really good story because I think it demonstrates how the town was able to work with the community, with our community partners for education, and also to investigate why is this happening? And why is this coyote coming into the neighborhood? And why is this coyote coming so close to people? It doesn't make sense. And so I really think it demonstrates exactly what our program, it encapsulates it in a really nice story. So Donna, I don't know if you want to take that or Caitlin wants to start.
Hi, Caitlin, I don't know if you want to join here or
Yeah.
whatever works. I can certainly start off. So we did have an issue in around the Oakville Trafalgar High School back in 2016. This coyote had started acting fairly aggressively. We did get reports through the coyote reporting system that really helped pinpoint where that was occurring. So that is a good demonstration of how the town was able to start looking into that a little more closely. We found that the reports of the coyote acting aggressively were really centered in a very specific area around the high school, and those reports got lesser and lesser as you moved out of that area. So with investigations through Oakville Milton Humane Society, the police were actually somewhat involved in that because the coyote was looking to be fairly assertive. Through the investigations, we found examples of, I know one was that the coyote would chase a ball, and the reports were that kids were complaining because this coyote would come running out of the forested area and start chasing the ball and start attacking them on the field. What was actually happening is we found that people were actually playing ball and fetch with this coyote, and it thought that this was a game. So when it saw the kids on the field with the soccer ball, it saw that as a game. It was not actually being aggressive. Same thing, there were kids that were in behind the school in this particular area. They used to eat their lunch there, and they were hand feeding the coyote, and that was an area that the coyote was very focused on and would actually approach students. So when this happened to a student that was not involved in the feeding, she was just walking through, this coyote jumped up on top of her. Again, looked very aggressive, but if you sort of look at it in the context of the behavior it was being taught, it was just looking for food. She was not injured. It took off. Another instance where we found that there was really poor behavior going on with training this coyote to behave in the way it did. There was one particular vehicle that was bringing food for the coyote, would honk the horn, would bring it in its car, they'd honk the horn, and that would be an indication to the coyote that basically food was ready. It was like a dinner bell, and so the coyote would come if cars honked at it. So when people said that this coyote had no fear of even people honking their horns and making noises, that's because it saw that as dinner time. So all of these things were creating this situation that really, if you look at the larger context, was a huge problem because people were perceiving it as a conflict, and this aggressive coyote, it was simply being trained through food. And there were also a lot of issues and instances with a lot of brush sites that weren't being cleaned up. There were holes in fences that were allowing the coyote very easy access in and out of both residential properties and through the school. So through this investigation, we found all these things out. It was still an issue that we needed to take care of. So it was decided that this coyote should be trapped and euthanized if we could do that. And again, sort of speaking to Caitlin's discussion about how difficult it is to actually do that in an urban setting, they went through quite a process with the police trying to capture this coyote. in the process, it effectively hazed it. We never did catch the coyote. It became so afraid of people by that point with trying to catch it that, again, through our coyote reporting system, we learned that we were getting no more reports of an aggressive coyote. It faded right back into the background. And unfortunately, later we learned, again, through the reporting system, that about a year later, this coyote was hit by a car near the QEW and died. But we do know that the hazing works. We do know that what a community does condition that coyote to display certain behaviors. So all of these things were really brought home to us and really made very real to us in a very on-the-ground sort of way. I don't know if you wanted to add to that, Caitlin, sorry.
You definitely covered that quite well, but I will just, the one thing that I will say, just because I was actively on that site day after day after day, because we were proactively trying to, like Donna said, capture that coyote just with respect to some of the concerns, and as a result, inadvertently hazing that. And speaking to kind of the intelligence level of coyotes in general, I think one thing that's important to kind of note is that, yeah, when we were there was absolutely food everywhere. Garbage is overflowing. Everything was unkempt. It wasn't a very good conducive setup, and it's obviously in a nice wood lot area, lots of lush vegetation, lots of fruit trees, things like that. So just endless resources. We saw the coyote playing with a glove. It was like throwing it up and down and playing with it like a toy. A ball that was left in the field, all of those our officers actually observed. And day after day of trying to chase after it, became well aware of the sound of our vehicle, the look of our uniforms, the smell of, anything coming close to it. And it just turned into, effectively hazing, exactly as we try to kind of promote as well. And it was quite the success story, and put into practice everything that we speak to every day. So I think that was a really good example.
Yeah, and I was just going to quickly add too that we did utilize municipal enforcement, did a lot of work with the community, with addressing some of the issues around the brush piles. We did quite a bit of work with the schools to fix up some of the issues that they had on their property. We also were working at that time with Oakville Green, who did some extensive education with the community, with the students particularly. We had made sure that they had the proper training, and we did do a number of public meetings around that as well. So again, bringing that education into play was really important. And there was an article about that in the Oakville Beaver, which summed it up really nicely. So that was, if anyone's interested, something that we will make available on our website if you're interested.
Thank you, Donna and Caitlin. I think that, as I had mentioned earlier, that story really does demonstrate that the program works. And so, and through the education, through the investigation, in partnership with all our partners, including the community, it's entirely a partnership to make this work, and we really rely on everyone. So it's really important that, just to reiterate, keeping your animals on leash and, removing any food attractants, really simple things that will promote the harmony that we can live in as a community with our wildlife. And I really believe this in my heart, that this is the best way that we can proceed and move forward. So it's really an exciting time, and I think we have a really good opportunity here as a community to embrace this. Donna, do we have any other questions that have come in?
Nope, I think that's all we have right now.
Okay. Leslie, did you have any comments? Oh, can you unmute her?
Anyway, just thanking the town of Oakville again, as I mentioned, on behalf of Coyote Watch Canada and the community. We are just very honored and always look forward to spending time with residents and your town officials. So you have a very unique community, and I think everybody should kind of give themselves a pat back. It's great. Anyway, thank you for
So Donna, do you have any comments, or are there any other questions? Anything to add?
Nope, nothing at my end. It was great, thanks.
Caitlin? No? So we do have a few more minutes, so we will remain available for any questions that come in. I guess the other thing that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention, though, is that you are able to actually submit any questions even after the meeting ends, just via email. So we do have an email address that I will make available on our Coyote page on our website, where you can submit any questions or concerns. You can always also call through to Service Oakville, which staff are available throughout the business day, and request, ask your question, and that question will be forwarded to the appropriate department for an answer to be provided to you. So I would encourage you that even after the meeting is over, there are opportunities for staff to answer any questions that you have or provide any information you may require. So I think at this point, if there's no other questions, anything else, Donna?
Sorry, I'm just looking through. Yep, we've got one more question. So it's just regarding coyote dens. It's a fairly long one, so I'll just sum it up, and just the resident wants to know that if a coyote den with adult coyotes and pups does locate in a residential neighborhood in future, what would the town's response be going forward?
So with respect to coyote dens, if the den site is established and we can find that den, and it is on municipal property, we will make every attempt to post signs, to put caution tape around it, to have staff available, as much as possible, whether it be the Humane Society, whether it be Coyote Watch, whether it be town staff, to be on site, to educate the public, to ensure that the den site is protected, but also the patrons of the park or public land are also mindful of the events that are occurring at that moment. We will, when it's on private property, it really becomes something that is the private property owner would be looking at, hopefully maintaining the den site. If that report did come in and we were able to establish it, we would consult with Coyote Watch Canada, and perhaps they can provide some assistance in that instance. But apart from that, private property is a separate issue. But I can assure you, on municipal property, we would make every attempt to ensure that the education and is available to the patrons of the park. Does that answer the question, or? Okay.
Yeah, and I think we're pretty much at 8:30.
Yes. So I think if that's it for now, I think that we will thank you again for participating. Leslie, did you have a last comment, or?
Just about that question.
Sure.
With respect to the dens and the locations, that's why it's really important for residents to wildlife proof their property, sealing underneath the decks, making sure outbuildings are secured. And oftentimes, if a den is disturbed, they might be desperate and move their den into a residential area. So that's another reason also to make sure that, we're walking our dogs on a leash. But, again, there's lots of information about how to ready your property you look for those locations fall time and then early spring, because mom's going to be looking for the dens, fox and coyotes in around March, the end of February, March, just trying to find a suitable location. Okay, good question.
And that's actually really great, because just a quick point to add is that we do provide seasonal updates to our educational material, whether it be a flyer or a website, to support the different times of year and the different cycles that the coyotes are in. So that's something in addition that supports the community to understand what's happening out there at that moment. And so thank you. So I think at this point, again, I extend a warm thank you for everyone who has participated, to our panelists and all the members of the public that were able to join us today. And again, if you have any further questions after the meeting is ended, just give us a call and we will help you out with those questions. Thank you. Is that a me thing?